Welcome back. Yeah, last time we were looking at this, we were looking at a ship that looked a lot like Star Trek. Here, I made some stations in the last little while because I need some stations in my game, and I need one big one to be sure, and something that the player would interact with. Now, in this level, the interaction is supposed to happen down here, and I've noticed something that was wrong in the last couple times I've tried to use this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything here. Getting stuff into Godot is pretty easy from Blender, but there's one thing I'm going to mention is the origin of the object in Blender doesn't really mean anything in Godot when you export as an object, which is what I like to do, and we're going to look at that here in a minute because I've made a couple changes. The world origin here at the bottom is what is kept inside of objects. Okay, so you can see each of these things has their own little object. You see the little dot there. Let me zoom in. The little origin for that. Godot doesn't care about that. Godot cares about how it was exported relative to the world origin. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to re-export the body. I got to select all the parts of the body here. There's multiple pieces. Oh, see, I need that bar. Yeah, it looks like everything is selected. Yep. All right. So you can see I went a little bit nuts with the fast boolean thing. But anyhow, I'm going to export this now. File, export to object. I did it once before, but it was wrong because of what I just said. So station 3 main body. Okay, so should save there. Now I want to get these rings, so we're going to get the upper ring. But the ring has a hub, and I want that to all be one thing. So the little disc in the middle. So file, and there's a reason why I'm doing this in pieces like this, and it'll show when we get over into Godot. So this is the station 3 upper ring. Thing to make sure when you're exporting, at least I find for Godot, make sure you have selection only, so you know what's in the file, because otherwise it'll put the lights and everything else in the scene. And I have a lot of hidden elements in the scene that were all things made for this game. I tend to work with one file that holds just about everything in the game, and then I just hide the parts I'm not currently working with. But anyhow, back to this. Selection only, objects as objects. That's important when it comes to being able to assign materials in Godot, and we'll see that again inside Godot. We want to be sure that we're applying modifiers, keeping the smooth groups, because Blender works with n-gons, which is polygons with anything above 4. Now, a lot of people will call n-gons anything above 4 vertexes. As far as I'm concerned, anything above 3 is more of an n-gon, because a lot of game engines don't do well with quads, which is the general term for 4 vertex faces. So you want to make sure that you triangulate faces. So you make sure all your polygons are actually only 3 vertex. Write out the materials. I don't really use them, but if I want to preview the object inside of Windows folders, Windows will allow you to preview the 3D item as long as there's a material file there, at least I find in Windows 10 anyhow. We want to include the UVs in case you did UV mapping. I just turned that on. Here, Blender, I didn't do the UVs yet. I'm just prototyping this thing to get the structure in the game, see what it looks like. I will probably come back into this file and redo this all again with UVs applied if I go to custom UV map the whole thing. Write the normals. Yes, you want to write the normals, because when it does the triangulate faces, you want it to pull the normal so that it's calculated for the face across to the new individual triangulated faces. Because Blender runs with n-gons, you might have a face that has, say, 5 vertexes and you missed it. You don't want it to create the normal based on how those smaller triangulated faces are made, or else you can end up with wrong normals. So make sure you have the right normals, so it calculates the appropriate normal for the face it generates. So there's the upper ring. Now, I want the lower ring, so let's start by getting the hub and that, and we're going to export that as the lower ring. Upper ring, body, lower ring. There we go. Now I know the settings are still the same, so there we go. So we have this beastie here. We're going to hop over to Godot. I had a station. That was Mega Station earlier, and we're going to come back to that. It's a much earlier version, which is all one chunk. So I'm just going to hide that for now. But selecting the spatial is kind of like giving your objects a new origin, because meshes, you might need to resize them and whatnot. You're better to just work with a spatial as a new root node. So we've got that. I'm going to replace those meshes in here. So stations, make sure I have stations selected. Over off the screen that you can't, so well, sure, I'll show you. If you've made the object material in Windows 10, sometimes your 3D previewer will let you quickly check the object. So, okay. It's kind of handy, I find. Otherwise I wouldn't care. So let's pull that main body over, and we're going to, oh, I must have missed it. Here we go. Here we go. If we drop it here, we've replaced that one. So station lower ring. Again, you got to make sure you have the target folder selected. Otherwise, it'll drop these into the very end of your scene tree. So we've done that. Now we have the target spatial up here selected. Let's put the main body in. Now, problem here is it spawned right in front of the camera. We want it to be, see, we exported Blender with that as the origin in Blender. So now the spatial's position, main body now marks that as its 0, 0. So if you see, it's translated to 0, 0. So it's now centered on the station. Now I have this station over here dragged off to the side, but it's a child of that as well. It was only there for comparison. So maybe for now I'll get rid of it. Or it doesn't matter. We'll use it in a minute, so I'll show it up. Now we need to get the rings, so let's get the lower ring. Hopefully. Lower ring. So now the lower ring is a child of the main body, which is fine, because they all have this as the parent. And it looks like it went in the right place. Yeah, that's a neat little trick. Because this has the same origin as this, you can actually make it a child without a problem. Now, let's do that again with upper ring. Boom. So we got the upper and lower ring. Now, upper ring, he's got the problem where who knows where it is. So let's, boom. Now they're in the correct position. That's pretty good. Now if we click here, remember when I said export objects as objects? These are the individual objects that ring is made out of. Now you can't, that the body's made out of, you can't pull them apart. Like you can't make that area detach from the mesh, from the main object. But you can apply different materials. But I don't like to do them this way, because if you apply a material here, every instance of this station uses these materials. Sometimes it's quicker and easier just to go into the geometry and override the material. It's just an opinion here. It's not a best practice or anything. It just depends what fits your situation. So I'm going to open this up. This is set to box map. Using Godot's triplanar is essentially box map with some tweaking. I'm going to do the same thing for the rings. So let's come to the rings, geometries, the override, load. Let's get that material I have made. There we go. And he's done now. Upper ring, that's tripping out my OCD. There we go. Upper ring. Let's put the upper ring in the upper. Geometry, material override. Oops. Material override. Load. There we go. So now there's one more thing I'd like to do. The reason why I did those separately and didn't just export them as one solid object, as I did in the previous version of this, the one that was hidden, Mega Station 1. Yeah. See if I hide that. Mega Station 1 is a little higher up. There we go. Mega Station. Let's go back to the one we're working on. Mega Station 1 was missing some details and the rings were permanently attached. I don't want these permanently attached because I can go into a script and station rings. So I'm just going to drop station rings on these. And I'm going to set a speed to 0.5, not 0.05. I don't want it moving too fast. And I want this ring to go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to say minus 0.05. But let's have a quick look at that script. The script is really simple. One, we're exporting a variable to the editor. That's the one that we saw where I typed in the 05 and that. And then we're just telling the object to rotate around its local y at the speed that we entered times the delta, which is pretty simple. Yeah, let's have a look here. Okay, so you don't see anything in the editor mode. In editor, unless I made it forget the thing about it, a tool script. Tool scripts run at editor time too if you want. But yeah, this temporary texture and stuff is good enough. If I run the project now, we're going to see. Let's just full screen it too. Oh, we're there when those two took off. Okay. There's our stations over there. Let's go see them. You see the rings up there are turning. There we go. I want to see my waypoints. But the rings are turning, so if we just sit here for a second. See them. Rings turning pretty good. Yeah. Let's start by visiting the first station, the one that I thought was pretty simple. Now, some friends have told me that they like this station too, so maybe I'll keep it around. This was supposed to be a ring that turns in a uniform direction on its hubs. The thing about that is, if you're spinning a single ring, the inside hub kind of would want to spin in the opposite direction. It's just some physics there. But if you did get the outer ring spinning and then you used other means to stop the inside hub, I mean, that's all possible. I mean, it's all sci-fi anyways, but the idea here is that I was going to make this as where the docking points were. And that would be there, and then that upper ring would spin in much the same way. But this station was exported in the completely solid way because I was just working on it. And then you see there's those funny rings on the arms. Those were going to be the ship assembly pens, and I may still do it that way. So you had little fighter bays here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but and then over here there would have been the ship assembly points up there. So let's just have a quick fly back over to the other station. Look at this whole. But let's come over here. I still have to model the docking arms off of this disc here, this area here. Get the I also have to work on the collision avoidance. But yeah. But yeah, that's our big station, and you get an idea for how big it is. If I, let's just pop over to DevCam. Oh, I got to give my DevCam the ability to move, much like a ship. Here we go. So the DevCam, you can see. There we go. You don't want the rings to be moved. In fact, they're probably even moving a bit too fast now for how big they're supposed to be. But this is our big station. And you've also seen a process of how to get something into Godot. Now these individual objects later, I'm going to be able to texture those bars and parts of the station again individually. And depending on how things going, I may even allow navigation above the main plane, right? So we'll see how that goes. So instead of just having this navigation layer, I may allow navigation above. But yeah, so that's kind of how to get a mesh into Godot. It's also also a little more than that. A little tiny bit of, I guess, avoiding the animation just by making a couple little scripts, a little bit of planning. You can get a very simple set of steps and whatnot and end up with a pretty good, well, I think it's kind of okay, pretty good station. But I do have to redo some stuff in Blender every now and then. Ooh, that's a weird one. Oh, whoops. Okay, so why are your... Oh, something has happened to his waypoint systems. Yeah, one of his waypoints have crashed. Okay. Weird. Let me see if this fellow's waypoints are doing... No, the waypoints have crashed. That's not good. Gonna have to find that. Gonna have to check that out later. Because I should be able to go to one of these guys and we should be able to see all of their waypoints. Just have a quick look. Oh, no immediate errors. Let's just rerun that again. I'm curious to see if I crashed it by accidentally clicking something under. Oh, yeah. I think I know what. Using the dev camera. The dev camera changes how some stuff is done. And having used the dev camera, what ship are we using? Well, there's all his waypoints. That's the one with 60 waypoints. So this fella. There we go. This hauler. This guy will eventually have things that attach underneath. So think of it kind of like a locomotive. Kind of like a locomotive freight hauler. We'll see. But anyhow, that's where we are today, and you've experienced one of the bugs that really shouldn't show up in game. I should be able to give him waypoints from underneath the nav mesh. Yeah, see? Yeah, that's all fine. Perfect. Anyhow, there we go. That's where I'm at right now, and if you've liked this kind of stuff, if you watch this long, I think you probably do. Again, this is all made in Godot and Blender. Some of the 2D stuff is using mostly, I'm going to say this time, open source apps, or at least free apps. Paint.net, it's not open source, but you can download it free. A lot of my texture work is done at Paint.net. We got some Inkscape stuff. You know, maybe I'll get into using GIMP. I have to get used to the new interface of GIMP, but it looks pretty good. Krita, A couple things are touched up in Krita, but not a lot. I only use that if I'm using my tablet. But mostly Blender. This is mostly Blender and Godot, amazingly enough. I do have some texture processing for making normal maps. Yeah, that's about it. Anyhow, again, this is Godot in Blender, and just working step by step here, building a few things. The next thing I kind of want to look at is getting some HUD elements working. If you look up in the upper corner, it says project name here and position. Just rudimentarily starts to, just really simple starts to how that's going to be. Anyhow, again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.